The twin suns of Liriath were setting, casting long, golden shadows across the city's gleaming towers. Ships of every shape and size filled the sky, their lights blinking like stars falling toward the planet. On the surface, Kale walked through the central plaza, eyes lifted to the sky. He was a young diplomat and engineer, not yet famous, but curious about everything. Today, however, his curiosity was tinged with something new: anticipation. News had spread across the galaxy. The Empress Seraphina, ruler of the Elysian Star Empire, was arriving. Her beauty and intelligence were legendary. More than that, her crown, a mysterious artifact said to control the energy of entire stars, was rumored to grant immense power. All the major factions were gathering on Liriath, hoping to gain her favor. But Kael, unlike the others, did not care about crowns or power. He was interested in the woman herself, and the kind of leader she truly was. Kael paused as a fleet of sleek silver ships descended into the planet's grand harbor. The largest ship, shaped like a crescent moon, glided silently above the tallest spire. People in the plaza fell silent, craning their necks, holding their breath. Then, the ship's doors opened, and a staircase of light extended downward. Out stepped Seraphina. She moved with a calm authority, yet there was an elegance in her steps. Her cloak shimmered like liquid metal, and her hair caught the sun, glowing like fire. Kale felt an odd pull in his chest, a mixture of awe and respect. Around him, diplomats and ambassadors jostled for position, eager to be the first to bow, the first to speak, the first to win her favor. Kale did nothing. He simply watched. Seraphina's eyes swept across the crowd, but they lingered on him for a brief moment. Not with judgment, not with curiosity, but with recognition. Kale did not understand why, but he felt the weight of that gaze. It was as if she saw him not as a human to be dismissed, not as a diplomat to be judged, but as a person. The Empress moved into the grand hall of Liriath's palace, a structure that stretched toward the clouds. Its walls were made of crystal, reflecting every color of the setting suns. Kale followed, not as an official guest, but as an observer, quietly moving through the crowd. Many envoys tried to intercept him, asking who he was, what his purpose was. Kale simply smiled and said, "I am Kale. I am here to see the truth for myself." Most dismissed him as naive, but he didn't care. Inside, Seraphina met the council of the galaxy's leaders. They bowed deeply, offering promises of alliances, riches, and technology. Some spoke of conquest, others of diplomacy, but all sought to bend her will to their own desires. Yet Seraphina listened patiently, asking thoughtful questions, testing their honesty and intentions. She seemed to understand every motive, seeing through deceit and pretense. Kale found a quiet corner in the hall, examining a set of mechanical devices displayed by a foreign envoy. One was a compact energy converter, capable of supplying power to an entire city with only a fraction of fuel. Kale's eyes lit up. He could see immediately how it worked, and how it could be improved. As he bent over the device, Seraphina's voice broke his concentration. "You understand this, don't you?" she asked softly. I think I can make it more efficient," he replied, trying not to show his nervousness. Seraphina smiled. "Not many would notice the small details, the hidden flaws. You do. That is rare." Kale blinked. He had expected her to walk past, to focus on the diplomats and their grand speeches. Instead, she was speaking to him, treating him as an equal, not as a servant or a subordinate. They spoke for a few minutes. She asked about his work on Liriath's energy grid, the innovations he had introduced, and the problems he had faced. Kale answered honestly, explaining the challenges and solutions. There was no flattery exchanged, no attempt to impress, just truth. And somehow, that seemed to matter more to Seraphina than any offer of riches or loyalty. Meanwhile, outside the palace, shadows stirred. Agents from rival empires watched Kale with suspicion. They could sense that he was not like the others. He had no armies, no fleets, no titles, yet the Empress had noticed him. That was dangerous. They whispered among themselves, plotting to manipulate him, to turn him into a tool. But Kale was not easily deceived. He moved with care, observing, thinking, and always one step ahead. As the council continued, a sudden tremor shook the palace. Energy readings spiked across Lyriath. The crowd panicked. Kale's instincts kicked in. He ran toward the source, a vault where a new experimental energy core had been installed. The core was unstable, threatening to explode and destroy part of the palace. Without hesitation, Kale leapt into action. He examined the core, analyzing its structure, pressure points, and energy flow. Sweat ran down his face, but he focused, recalculating, rerouting energy conduits, and stabilizing the system. Within minutes, the core calmed, glowing steadily instead of violently. Serafina arrived seconds later, her eyes wide. You stopped it?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. Kale nodded, breathing heavily. "It was going to overload. I just fixed it in time." For a long moment, she studied him. Then she smiled, not with amusement, but with genuine admiration. "You have courage," she said, "and skill. Both are rare. Few could act without hesitation when danger comes so close." The other leaders were silent, stunned. Some envied him. Others were angry. Here was a simple human. Not a noble, not a general. Yet he had prevented disaster that could have cost countless lives. He had no desire for fame or reward. He had acted for the sake of life itself. As the day turned to night, the council adjourned. Serafina walked with Kale through the palace gardens, a space filled with glowing plants and flowing water. The two suns had set, leaving a sky of deep indigo, dotted with stars. "You are different from the others," she said softly. "They seek my crown, my power, my presence. They want to use me for their gain." Kale shook his head. "I have no interest in crowns or power. I care about understanding, about helping, about seeing the truth. That is what matters to me." Serafina's eyes sparkled in the starlight. "Perhaps that is why I noticed you. You are rare. In all the galaxy, you stand apart." Kale felt a warmth he could not explain. He had spent his life solving problems, fixing machines, navigating politics. But this was new. This was a connection beyond words, beyond titles and power. Suddenly, a flash of light streaked across the sky. It was a scout ship from one of the rival factions, approaching Lyriath at impossible speed. Kale and Serafina watched, knowing that the real challenges were only beginning. The galaxy was vast, and ambition ran deep. But for the first time, Kale felt that he was not alone. He had the attention and trust of someone who could change the universe, and somehow, that made all the difference. As they returned to the palace, Kale realized that nothing would ever be the same. The arrival of Serafina had shifted the balance, and he was now part of something much larger than himself. He did not yet know how dangerous the coming days would be, nor the trials he would face. But he knew one thing. The galaxy would remember this day. The day he met the Empress, the day he saw the truth, and the day his life quietly, irrevocably, changed. In the quiet of the palace, as the stars shone overhead, Kale made a silent promise to himself. He would protect life. He would use his skills wisely, and he would face the galaxy not with ambition or greed, but with courage, knowledge, and compassion. The Empress's arrival had begun a story that would ripple across the stars, and Kale, the unassuming young engineer, had already become a part of it. The night on Lyriath was calm, but the calm was only on the surface. In the shadows of the palace gardens, whispers moved like invisible currents. Envoys from distant empires huddled in secret chambers, exchanging urgent messages. They were frustrated, angry, and worried. The Empress had not fallen for their offers of wealth, fleets, or planets. Worse, her attention had quietly shifted to Kale. A young human with no title, no army, no claim to power. Yet somehow, he had earned her respect. "Why him?" hissed Lord Vadar, an emissary from the Xyrith Dominion. His cloak shimmered in the dim light as he paced. "He is nothing. A human with tools and machines. No nobility. No lineage. Why does she even notice him?" His companion, Lady Solara of the Nova Federation, frowned. "Because he is different. He doesn't seek her crown or her power. He solves problems. He saves lives. That is what makes him dangerous. He cannot be bought, and he cannot be manipulated." Vadar slammed his fist on the table. "Then we must act. If the Empress chooses him, the galaxy will be lost to our influence. The crown, her power, everything we hope to gain, gone." Meanwhile, Kale had returned to his modest quarters within the palace, not as a guest of honor, but simply as someone who had duties to observe and assist. The events of the day still weighed on him. He had prevented a disaster that could have destroyed the palace's energy core. Yet he felt no pride. He had simply done what needed to be done. But he could not ignore the looks he had received from Serafina, the trust, the understanding, the quiet recognition. The next morning, Kale was called to the palace laboratories. Serafina was already there, examining a holographic map of Lyriath's solar system. Her crown lay on a pedestal nearby, glowing faintly, as if aware of the discussions around it. Kale stepped forward, unsure why he had been summoned. "Kale," Serafina began, her voice calm but deliberate. "I want your advice. We are receiving fleets from multiple factions. They claim to come in peace. But I suspect their intentions are less than honorable. What do you suggest we do?" Kale studied the holographic map. Ships were entering from all directions, some cloaked, others broadcasting false identifications. "We need to separate their signals, track each vessel individually, and verify their claims," he said. "Many will pretend to be friendly, but their patterns will reveal their true motives. We can predict their moves before they act." Serafina nodded, impressed. "I trust your judgment. Begin immediately." For the next several hours, KL worked tirelessly. He monitored the incoming fleets, adjusted Lyriath's sensors, and analyzed communications. Gradually, a pattern emerged. Some ships genuinely sought diplomacy, but others carried spies, saboteurs, and opportunists. Kale flagged each threat, presenting his findings to Serafina. "You see?" he explained, pointing to a cluster of ships hovering near the outer asteroid belt. "They are pretending to transport food and medical supplies. In reality, their cargo holds are full of energy disruptors. If they reach the palace, they could cripple our systems and force the Empress to surrender." Serafina's eyes narrowed. "Then we stop them before they arrive." "You will help me design a defense, Kale?" Kale smiled faintly. "I already have some ideas." Over the next day, Kale and Serafina worked side by side. They designed energy shields that could protect the palace from sabotage, constructed automated drones to inspect incoming ships, and coordinated with Lyriath's own security forces. Kale's technical expertise combined with Serafina's strategic vision created a system unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Elegant, efficient, and humane. No lives would be lost, yet no one with ill intent could breach the palace. Meanwhile, the rival factions grew more restless. Lord Vadar and Lady Solara watched Kale's progress through hidden sensors. "He is too clever," Solara muttered. "And the Empress, she trusts him more than us. How can we compete with that?" Vadar clenched his teeth. "We must create a distraction, something that will draw her attention away. Give us an advantage. If Kale can stop every threat, we need to escalate." As night fell, Lyriath's twin suns vanished beyond the horizon, leaving a sky of deep violet. Kale, exhausted from his long hours, wandered the palace gardens. The bioluminescent plants glowed softly, illuminating winding paths and tranquil pools. Serafina joined him, her presence calm and grounding. "You have done well today," she said, her voice carrying over the soft trickle of a fountain. "Not many could have handled such pressure. Yet you remained calm. You see what others cannot." Kale shook his head. "I just did what was necessary. Anyone could have done it if they had the knowledge and the chance." Serafina smiled gently. "Perhaps, but few would act without fear of reward or recognition. You did not. That is why I trust you." Kale felt a warmth rise in his chest, but he said nothing. Words seemed inadequate. Instead, he simply nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over him. The galaxy was watching, and the choices he made now could change the course of countless lives. Suddenly, a commotion arose from the palace entrance. Scouts reported multiple small ships attempting to breach the outer perimeter. Kale and Serafina rushed to the control center. The intruders were not large enough to pose a full-scale attack, but their intent was clear. They were testing the defenses, looking for weaknesses. Kale acted quickly. He analyzed the ship's movement patterns and adjusted the automated drones. Using a combination of energy shields and calculated intercepts, he guided the intruders safely away from populated areas, preventing damage or panic. Serafina observed silently, her confidence in him growing with every decision. After the threat was neutralized, Kale and Serafina returned to the palace. She looked at him with a mixture of admiration and something unspoken, an understanding that went beyond words. "Kale," she said softly, "you have a rare gift. You see solutions where others see only chaos. The galaxy needs that perspective." Kale felt the weight of her words. He had always believed that knowledge and action could solve problems, but now he realized the scale of what was possible. With someone like Serafina beside him, the combination of human ingenuity and wise leadership could change the course of history. But the galaxy was not yet ready to accept such change. In hidden corridors, rival factions plotted. Their agents moved like shadows, planting false intelligence, spreading rumors, and seeking to undermine Kale's influence. They underestimated him, thinking him naive, unaware of the dangers lurking in politics and power. The next morning, Kale discovered a small device planted near the palace's communication hub. It was designed to intercept messages and feed false data to the Empress. Kale studied it carefully, analyzing the intricate mechanisms. With careful hands, he disabled the device and traced its origin to a nearby starship. He reported his findings to Serafina. "Someone is trying to manipulate information. They want to make you doubt allies, create confusion. But I have identified the source." Serafina's eyes met his. "Thank you, Kale. Your vigilance protects not only me but the entire planet. You are proving yourself indispensable." Kale shook his head. "I am just doing my part. I cannot control what others choose to do, but I can ensure that their attempts do not succeed." As the day progressed, Kale continued to monitor the fleets, repair systems, and plan defenses. Serafina watched, silently taking notes. Learning from his approach, she admired his humility, his courage, and his relentless focus on solving problems rather than seeking personal gain. In a universe full of ambition and greed, Kale's qualities shone brightly. That evening, as Lyriath's twin moons rose, casting silver light across the palace, Kale and Serafina walked together along the terraces. Below, the city sparkled like a sea of stars. And beyond, the distant galaxies stretched endlessly. "You have changed everything," Serafina said, her voice quiet, almost a whisper. "The factions believed they could manipulate me, control me. But you act not for power, not for reward, but because it is right. That is rare." Kale looked at the stars. "I only do what I can. The galaxy is vast. There will always be challenges. But together, perhaps we can make a difference." Serafina nodded. "Yes, and I believe we will." As they stood there, silent but connected, Neither could see the eyes watching them from the shadows. The galaxy was far from peaceful. Threats lurked in the darkness, and rival factions were growing impatient. Yet, in that moment, KL and Serafina found strength in one another, a bond built on trust, respect, and a shared vision for a better universe. The Empress's presence had always commanded attention. But now it was not just her power that drew the galaxy's gaze. It was the combination of her wisdom and the unassuming human who walked beside her. Together, they had begun to tilt the balance, and the shadows would soon realize that their plans were no longer simple. Kale's intellect, combined with Serafina's leadership, created a force that could not be easily controlled. The galaxy had begun to notice that something new, something extraordinary, was rising. As the night deepened, Kale returned to his quarters, exhausted but determined. He knew the days ahead would test him in ways he could not yet imagine. Rivals would escalate their schemes, factions would attempt betrayal. Yet, for the first time, he felt confident, not because of power or weaponry, but because he had Serafina's trust and the ability to act with clarity and courage. In the quiet of his room, Kale reflected on the day's events. The galaxy was unpredictable, full of ambition, danger, and uncertainty. But one thing was clear: with wisdom, skill, and integrity, even the smallest individual could influence the course of history. And perhaps, just perhaps, a human could show the universe a new way forward. The shadows would come. The conspiracies would unfold. But KL was ready. The galaxy had begun to watch. And the story of Kale and the Empress was only just beginning. The grand hall of Lyriath shone under the light of 1,000 floating lanterns. Delegates from dozens of star systems filled the room, their robes bright with colors and symbols representing their empires. Holographic displays of planets, fleets, and energy fields hovered above the polished floor. At the center of it all stood Empress Serafina, calm, poised, and radiant, her crown gleaming softly. Beside her, Kale remained quiet but alert, his mind calculating, observing, and preparing for whatever might come. The council had been called because tensions among the factions had reached a breaking point. Leaders demanded that the Empress choose a political alliance. Some spoke of loyalty to her empire, others of military support, trade dominance, or shared technology. But all of them wanted the crown, her power, and her influence. Most believed that Kale, a human with no title, could not matter in the decision. They were wrong. Kale stood slightly behind Serafina, but his presence was noted immediately. Delegates whispered, some in disbelief, others in suspicion. "Who is he?" asked one envoy. "Why is he allowed to advise the Empress?" "Simple human," muttered another, his voice tinged with disdain. "No fleets, no armies, no power. Surely he cannot influence her choice." Yet Kale's influence was already visible. In the hours leading up to the council, he had studied the factions' movements, their resources, and their weaknesses. He had analyzed potential outcomes and proposed solutions to prevent conflict. His quiet, methodical approach had impressed Serafina, and she had invited him to observe and to speak when needed. The meeting began. Voices filled the hall, rising and falling in waves of argument and negotiation. Kale listened carefully, noting who was honest, who was bluffing, and who was acting purely out of greed. He saw the patterns in their words and actions, and he realized that some factions were planning to betray the others if given a chance. One by one, the leaders made their speeches. A representative from the Valar Dominion promised protection and military strength. A senator from the Nova Federation spoke of trade, wealth, and shared resources. A counselor from the Kryn sector emphasized intelligence networks and technological superiority. Each offered the Empress the same thing: power, control, influence. But none offered integrity, wisdom, or partnership. Kale could feel the tension rising. This was not simply a debate about alliances. It was a test of judgment, strategy, and character. If Serafina chose unwisely, conflict could erupt across multiple star systems, and countless lives could be lost. Then, a sudden surge of energy rippled through the palace. Sensors went off, indicating a breach in the perimeter. Drones detected several cloaked ships approaching at high speed. Kale's instincts kicked in immediately. "They're attempting to force a situation," Kale said quietly to Serafina. "They want to destabilize the council, create chaos, and push you into a hasty decision." Serafina's eyes narrowed. "Then we stop them before they reach the hall. Can you manage this?" Kale nodded. "Yes. Follow my lead." Within moments, Kale coordinated Lyriath's defenses. Automated drones swarmed into action, creating energy barriers and guiding intruding ships into safe holding zones. The intruders, expecting confusion and fear, were stunned by the precision and efficiency of the response. Not a single life was harmed, yet the threat was neutralized. The delegates watched in awe. Some began to murmur among themselves. "Who is this human?" they whispered. "How can one person manage such control? Such strategy?" Kale did not pause. He moved among the consoles, rerouting energy flows, stabilizing power grids, and maintaining communication channels. Serafina observed silently, her confidence in him growing with every decision he made. She could see clearly that Kale's abilities went far beyond engineering. He had vision, foresight, and calm judgment qualities that no army, fleet, or weapon could replicate. When the crisis was over, Serafina returned to the council. The delegates were shaken, some ashamed, others fearful. Their attempts at intimidation had failed. The room had seen what true competence and courage looked like. Kale stepped forward. "If I may speak," he said, "alliances should not be based on fear, power, or greed. They should be based on trust, understanding, and shared goals. Those who value only their own gain will betray you when convenient. Those who act for the common good will stand by you when the challenges are greatest." The room fell silent. Every delegate turned to listen, not expecting such clarity from a young human. Kale continued, "The crown, the power, the influence, it is not a tool for domination, it is a responsibility. Choose not for what you can take, but for what you can build together. That is how civilizations survive, and that is how the galaxy thrives." Serafina's gaze met his, and Kale felt a quiet understanding pass between them. She did not need him to speak for her. She valued his insight, his judgment, and his perspective. Together, they represented a new approach, a combination of wisdom, courage, and careful strategy. The council grew tense. Some delegates bristled, seeing their schemes threatened. Others began to reconsider, realizing that Kale's words held truth they could not ignore. The energy of the room shifted. For the first time, the focus was not on power or ambition, it was on responsibility, unity, and foresight. Then, the most audacious faction attempted a bold move. A hidden device within one of the transport ships activated, sending a pulse toward the crown's pedestal. The pulse threatened to destabilize the crown's energy, potentially unleashing a catastrophic explosion. Kale reacted instantly. He ran to the control console, analyzing the device's frequency and energy patterns. Serafina joined him, her hands hovering over the crown, sensing its energy. "We must act together," she said. "I can stabilize it with the crown's power, but you must counter the pulse." Kale nodded. Using his knowledge of energy systems and spatial dynamics, he recalibrated the palace's shields and rerouted energy channels. Sparks flew from the consoles as the pulse approached, but Kale's calculations held true. He guided the energy into a containment loop, while Serafina focused her crown's power to reinforce the stabilization. Time seemed to stretch. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and disaster would strike. But Kale remained calm, his mind precise, his hands steady. Slowly, the pulse diminished, its energy absorbed safely into the system. The crown glowed softly, its power intact, as if acknowledging Kale's skill and composure. The room erupted in awe and relief. Delegates looked on, stunned. One by one, they realized that the young human, unassuming and seemingly ordinary, had prevented a disaster that could have destroyed them all. And he had done so not for fame or recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. After the council reconvened, Serafina addressed the room. You have witnessed how quickly ambition and deceit can bring danger. You have seen how courage, knowledge, and integrity can prevent it. I will not choose an alliance based on fear or power. I will choose one that values life, wisdom, and responsibility. Whispers filled the hall. Delegates glanced nervously at each other, unsure who would gain favor. And then, Serafina made her decision. She stepped forward, not toward the richest empire, not toward the most powerful fleet, but toward Kale. Kale, she said, her voice calm yet resonant. You have proven your wisdom, your courage, and your integrity. You have shown that the crown's true power lies not in domination, but in responsibility and understanding. I choose you not for what you can command, but for what you can help create. Gasps filled the hall. Delegates were stunned. A human, a single individual with no army, no title, no lineage, had been chosen over the galaxy's most powerful factions. Some scowled in anger, others in disbelief, and a few, quietly, felt hope stirring. Kale stepped forward, his hands trembling slightly. I am honored, he said, but this is not about me. It is about the future we can build together. If I am to stand with you, Empress, it is to serve life, knowledge, and unity. Not power or pride. Serafina nodded, a gentle smile on her face. That is why I trust you. That is why the universe itself will remember this moment. The energy in the hall shifted. For a moment, the galaxy seemed to pause, silent and watchful. The choice had been made. The crown's true purpose had been revealed, and the galaxy, sensing a new era dawning, fell silent in awe. As Kael and Serafina stood together, the rivals began to reassess their ambitions. They could no longer rely on manipulation or intimidation. They had witnessed something greater: the power of integrity, courage, and wisdom. And in that moment, Kael understood that this was only the beginning. The real challenges were still ahead. Factions would test their resolve. Forces of greed and ambition would attempt to undermine them. But Kael and Serafina were prepared. Together, they had shown the galaxy that true power lay not in domination, but in the ability to act wisely, to protect life, and to inspire trust. And in that understanding, Kael felt a quiet certainty. The Empress had chosen not because he sought the crown, but because he understood its responsibility, and in doing so, he had begun to shape the universe in ways no one had imagined possible. The council adjourned, leaving the hall empty except for Kael and Serafina. They walked slowly toward the palace gardens, bathed in the soft light of Lyriath's twin moons. The galaxy will not forget this day, Serafina said softly. They will remember what it means to choose wisely, and to act with integrity. And they will remember the human who stood beside me. Kael looked up at the stars, feeling a deep sense of purpose. Then, we have work to do, he said. Not for power, not for pride, but for life, for knowledge, and for the future we can build together. And with that, they stepped into the night, ready to face whatever challenges the galaxy might send next. The galaxy had never been as quiet as it was that day. Word of Serafina's choice spread faster than light itself. A human Kael had been chosen over kings, generals, and fleets. The galaxy paused, stunned by a decision no one expected. From distant star systems, envoys and rulers debated the meaning of it. Some were angry, some relieved, and a few felt hope. They had witnessed something new: the power of wisdom, courage, and humility over ambition and greed. Kael and Serafina stood together on the observation deck of Lyriath's palace, watching the stars. The twin moons cast silver reflections across the water of the palace gardens below. Kael had never felt so aware of the universe's vastness. He had spent his life solving problems, building machines, and analyzing systems. But now, he realized that true challenges lay not only in technology or strategy, but in the choices one made and the lives one touched. "Kale," Serafina said, her voice calm but full of meaning, "you have changed more than just my choice. You have shown the galaxy what true leadership can be. It is not taken by force, and it is not granted by wealth. It is earned through understanding, courage, and action." Kale nodded, a mixture of humility and determination on his face. "I only acted as I could. The real work begins now. If we are to protect life, to guide civilizations wisely, we must act carefully and decisively." Their first mission came swiftly. A nearby system, the Thrin Belt, was on the verge of collapse. A massive energy storm threatened to destroy inhabited planets. The factions that had once sought Serafina's crown debated whether to send aid, each arguing for their own advantage. Kale and Serafina acted together, uniting the resources of Lyriath and coordinating with neutral systems. Kale analyzed the storm's patterns, calculating trajectories and energy flows. Serafina used her crown to stabilize gravitational fields and redirect energy bursts safely away from populated planets. They worked tirelessly, side by side, guiding fleets, energy converters, and emergency evacuation systems. Lives were saved, cities preserved, and the galaxy saw the first true act of leadership from a human paired with an empress. News spread. Across the stars, beings of many species paused to observe. They saw the human working calmly, decisively. Without arrogance or ambition, they saw the Empress acting wisely and decisively, her trust in Kale unwavering. Across countless light years, civilizations began to reconsider their assumptions. Perhaps humans were not weak. Perhaps humans could shape the future. Back on Lyriath, rival factions seethed. Lord Vadar and Lady Solara had expected Kale to be an easy target, a pawn to manipulate. Instead, he had anticipated every move, countered every scheme, and inspired loyalty in ways no one had imagined. They realized that brute force or intimidation could no longer control outcomes. The galaxy had begun to notice a new force, rising, a force of intellect, integrity, and courage. Kale and Serafina continued their journey from system to system. In the Dahlin cluster, they mediated a dispute between mining colonies and native inhabitants, using Kale's technical solutions to create sustainable energy and water distribution. In the Vera expanse, they prevented a starship collision by rerouting fleets and stabilizing gravitational fields. Everywhere they went, they left a trail of innovation, safety, and hope. Through all of this, Kale's humanity shone. He was not a conqueror or a ruler seeking glory. He asked questions, listened carefully, and acted decisively to protect life. Serafina admired his courage and humility. She saw in him not only a partner but a symbol of what her empire could become. Together, they were not rulers in the traditional sense, they were guardians, inspiring civilizations to act with wisdom and cooperation. Yet challenges persisted. Secret factions attempted sabotage, hoping to test their resolve. One night, a small fleet tried to seize control of an energy hub vital to multiple planets. Kale anticipated their approach. He recalibrated the hub's defenses, creating decoys and redirecting energy to prevent damage. Serafina coordinated diplomatic messages, convincing neighboring fleets to block the intruders' escape routes. The attackers were captured without violence, and the citizens of the sector celebrated the ingenuity and restraint of the human and the Empress. With each success, Kale gained confidence, but he never let it cloud his judgment. He understood that power without responsibility could destroy everything, and he knew that wisdom without action was meaningless. Serafina observed this quietly, often smiling when Kale solved problems in ways others could not imagine. One evening, as they floated in orbit around a newly stabilized planet, Serafina turned to him. "Kale, the galaxy watches us. They will try to test our decisions, our resolve, and our intentions. Are you ready for that?" Kale looked at the stars, considering, "I do not seek glory. I seek to protect life and solve problems. If the galaxy tests us, We will respond with care, wisdom, and courage. That is all any of us can do. Serafina smiled, a mixture of pride and trust in her eyes. Then we will face whatever comes, together. Months passed, and the pair became known across star systems as symbols of hope. Planets once divided by conflict now cooperated, inspired by the actions of a human and an empress. Cities thrived with new technology designed by Kale. Energy crises were solved. Starship navigation became safer. And all the while, Kale remained humble, never seeking praise, always focusing on solutions, always putting life first. The galaxy began to change. Factions that had once plotted domination reconsidered their strategies. They realized that the future favored collaboration, not conquest. They watched the humans' actions and learned that courage, knowledge, and integrity could outshine fleets, armies, and crowns. And slowly, a new era of interstellar cooperation began. Yet, through it all, Kale remained grounded. One night, he stood with Serafina on the balcony of Lyriath's palace, gazing at a distant nebula. "Do you ever wonder," he asked softly, "if all of this is too much for one person or even for us together?" Serafina placed a hand on his shoulder. "No, because it is not about one person. It is about choices. Every life we touch, every problem we solve, every mind we inspire, it multiplies." End quote. The universe responds not to fear or greed, but to courage, wisdom, and action. "You have shown that, Kale." Kale smiled quietly. He had never imagined that a simple human could have such an impact. Yet here he was, shaping the future of countless civilizations, not through ambition, but through the quiet strength of responsibility, intelligence, and compassion. The twin moons of Lyriath reflected in the water below, shimmering like silver fire. Across the galaxy, civilizations paused to reflect on what had happened. A human had proven that one individual, acting with wisdom and courage, could influence the course of the universe. And the Empress, wise and perceptive, had recognized this truth, forging a partnership that inspired all who witnessed it. In the months that followed, Kale and Serafina continued their journey, resolving crises, guiding civilizations, and fostering cooperation. The crown, once seen as a symbol of dominion, became a symbol of responsibility, wisdom, and partnership. And the galaxy, watching carefully, began to hum with a quiet, hopeful silence. On Lyriath, Kale stood once more in the palace gardens, looking up at the stars. He thought of the challenges they had faced, the crises they had prevented, and the lives they had saved. And he realized that what mattered most was not recognition, not power, not even the crown, but the knowledge that his choices had made a difference. Serafina joined him silently. Together, they watched the galaxy stretch endlessly before them, filled with possibilities, challenges, and life. And for a moment, the universe itself seemed to pause in awe and recognition. "You were right," Kale said softly. "The future is what we choose to make it." Serafina smiled, her eyes reflecting the distant stars. "And together, we will make it better." The galaxy had watched. The factions had tested. Envoys had whispered. And the stars had shone upon their choices. And in that quiet, observant silence, the universe understood that something extraordinary had occurred. Humanity, through one person's courage, ingenuity, and integrity, had stepped forward as a force for hope, wisdom, and unity. The Empress and the human stood together, not as ruler and subject, but as partners, guardians, and symbols of a new era. And as the galaxy turned, quiet but alive with potential, it was clear that this was only the beginning. The universe, for the first time in countless cycles, fell silent, not in fear, but in wonder.